Hey, all Sky here. First, I want to take a second to thank all the show's listeners, sponsors, and supporters for helping make this show what it is. I literally couldn't do it without you. And now I want to tell you about the newest way to help support the show. Whenever you shop at Amazon.com, stop by ScottHorton.org first, and just click the Amazon logo on the right side of the page. That way the show will get a kickback from Amazon's end of the sale. It won't cost you an extra cent. And it's not just books. Amazon.com sells just about everything in the world, except cars, I think. So whatever you need, they've got it. Just click the Amazon logo on the right side of the page at ScottHorton.org or go to ScottHorton.org/Amazon. All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. I'm Scott Horton. This is my show, The Scott Horton Show. And next up is Jonathan Landay. He's doing the national security beat, of course, over there at McClatchy Newspapers. That's McClatchyDC.com. And welcome back to the show, Jonathan. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, good. Happy to have you back on the show here. And now, so the piece is titled here, latest at McClatchyDC.com, U.S. Surge in terror attacks driven by more threatening al-Qaeda affiliates. And now, it's hard, I think, a little bit to break down this data, but I'm sure you're up to it. Do we count terrorist attacks the same way when it was the insurgency against the American occupation in in Iraq? Where every attack counted as a terrorist attack or not? Because sometimes that was just in the propaganda on TV, and sometimes it was in the actual numbers, and then sometimes you may have a real point. If they did a suicide truck bomb that targeted a marketplace and some Americans, so it's kind of hard to differentiate all this sort of thing. But certainly there's been, since the civil war in Syria broke out, the war in Iraq has broken back out again as well. And then you got jihadists spread all the way through North Africa and what have you. But so this is then the new State Department report counting these. Can you help us discriminate and differentiate between who all is core al-Qaeda and who's a franchise and how many of them, and are they coming for us and what the hell?
Well, I can try. There was a controversy during the Bush administration about the way they counted terrorist attacks. That seems to have been all sorted out now. And these attacks that are being charted now are not inclusive of insurgent attacks like the Taliban, as far as I can tell, on American troops who remain in Afghanistan. For the most part, it's focused on terrorism around the world, terrorist attacks around the world. The State Department has charted a more than 40% increase between 2012 and 2013. And I have to say that involved in the numbers now, as opposed to several years ago, is a special program over at the University of Maryland. So there are academics who are involved in developing the criteria and determining what attacks met were qualified as terrorist attacks, as opposed to years ago when it was simply the National Counterterrorism Center. Anyway, so basically, yeah, when they talk about core al-Qaeda, I like to refer to it more as the central leadership of al-Qaeda that's been based ever since 2001, when the Americans invaded Afghanistan, in the neighboring tribal areas of Pakistan, and we're referring basically to Ayman al-Zawahiri. He was the number two man to Osama bin Laden until bin Laden was taken out, and then he succeeded bin Laden. He's an ideologue. He's an Egyptian, a former doctor. So he's basically, around him, his leadership, that's basically referred to by the government as core al-Qaeda. And then you have what they call the affiliates or offshoots, which are these groups that adhere, for the most part, to al-Qaeda's or bin Ladenism, bin Laden's tenets, his goal of creating, some kind of unified Islamic emirate spanning the Muslim world, and that these members they swear allegiance or bayat to Zawahiri now as the leader of, or the emir of al-Qaeda. These groups are generally, there's a whole bunch of them now, in part because of the aggressive American and drone-backed anti-terrorism program that's been going on in Pakistan's tribal areas. A lot of foreign fighters based there have left and dispersed from that area to other parts of the Islamic world, to what are known as ungoverned spaces, places where they can base themselves and train and attract recruits and stage attacks, plan attacks. So we're talking about beginning, let's say, in the Arabian Peninsula, Yemen and Saudi Arabia, with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. In fact, the Yemeni government, with the assistance of the United States, has now got a major offensive underway against AQAP, as it's known as. AQAP does, in the view of the United States government, pose a threat to Americans, to America. I don't know how huge a threat in terms of its ability to stage a massive terrorist spectacular on the scale of 9/11, but we do know that in the past they have tried. They were responsible for sending the guy with wearing the explosive underwear on the plane over Detroit. They've tried to send bombs on cargo planes disguised as toner cartridges for toner cartridges for printers. So that's kind of the scale that they've operated on. They are very dangerous to the government of Yemen, however. So from there we move up to kind of north, if you would, to Iraq, where you have the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Shams, or Syria, which was the al-Qaeda affiliate, the Iraqi affiliate of al-Qaeda, but has since been disowned by Mr. Zawahiri because of its refusal to adhere to his directive to get out of Syria, stop fighting in Syria, and confine itself to Iraq. That affiliate, that former affiliate or current affiliate, I don't know how you want to put it, because they are in this terrorism report, and they are still considered the Iraqi affiliate of al-Qaeda, has stepped up hugely its operations in Iraq, and have been responsible for just a wave of violence that is consuming Iraq now, aimed at the Shiite-led government. Then right across the border, you have Syria, the civil. Then you move across up into to North Africa, where you have al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, the North African affiliate, which is responsible for terrorist attacks in places like Mali and other North African states. So those are sort of the core Al-Qaeda and its affiliates.
All right, so if, let's say, I don't know, you could include Yemen if you wanted, but...
to maintain control over these areas. Nevertheless, they have armor, they have tanks, APCs, armored personnel carriers that have been captured from the Iraqi and, but for the most part, Syrian forces, artillery. They have a sophisticated use of social networks. I subscribe to the Twitter accounts of both ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra in order to, and they have English language tweets. They put videos up on, sophisticated videos up on YouTube, sort of trying to promote their prowess and thereby attract new recruits, but also kind of to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies, including the Assad regime. And so these are not the kind of groups that the United States dealt with in before and right after 9/11. They have developed into much more threatening organizations. And in fact, one of the main worries now that was pointed out in this report is in Afghanistan. Or let me back up. These spaces, most of Afghanistan came under the thumb of the Taliban, which allowed al-Qaeda to come in, allowed bin Laden to come in and set up training camps, and bring up he had thousands of recruits come in there, 55,000 alone in his 055 brigade, which was his combat brigade there, and that's what you're starting to see now in northern Syria. And in addition, in northern Syria, that Bashar al-Assad could have asked for, because what they have actually done, their presence, and particularly the presence of foreign Islamists in Syria, has helped him consolidate his support among secularists, among the Christian minority, his own Alawite minority, Shia, people who, communities that don't want to live or hate the idea of living under these Sunni Islamists. They think that the other side, the rebels, are all, or for the most part, are all foreigners, and so that has really worked for him.
Jonathan, when I talked with David Enders, and I know he hadn't been there for a little while now, a year or more.
Yeah, but David knows a lot more than most people.
Yeah, well, and he's brilliant. And he's an incredibly brave reporter. Of course, kidnapped by al-Nusra and then and then survived. And of course, I've been talking to him about the Iraq War since 2005. The work that he's done there. And we talked about how in the Iraq War, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Zarqawi's guys, the so-called Islamic State, they were really never more than a few % of the Sunni-based insurgency, which is really the tribes, the Sunni tribal leaders fighting against what they saw was the loss of Baghdad and their power over the country and that kind of thing, and resisting the Shiite takeover. But he said, in Syria, it really is the al-Nusra front, and then later came ISIS, that they really are the cutting edge of this thing. They're not the small percent.
Syrian, whereas ISIS is led by Iraqis and has got a larger percentage of foreign fighters in it than other groups, which is one of the reasons why you have this internecine battles going on between them, because ISIS tends to be far more brutal than any of the other Islamic groups. And again, that has been a huge boon to Assad, because it's helped. His army suffers from serious manpower shortages. They've been fighting for 3 years. They're tired. FSA units that do fight. I spent time with FSA units in Jordan. I didn't go across the border, but I spent time with FSA units in Jordan, and they were fighting across the border against the regime. But again, the strongest fighters, the strongest groups, by dint of their fervency, as well as the fact that they were getting the bulk of the supplies of the arms until Saudi switched from Qatar, are the Islamists.
Mm-hmm. More threatening Al-Qaeda affiliates. Hey, Al Scott Horton here for The Future of Freedom, the monthly journal of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Edited by libertarian purist Sheldon Richman, The Future of Freedom brings you the best of our movement, featuring articles by Richman, Jacob Hornberger, James Bovard, and many more. The Future of Freedom stands for peace and liberty, and against our criminal world empire and Leviathan state. Subscribe today. It's just $25 per year for the back pocket-sized print edition, $15 per year to read it online. That's The Future of Freedom at fff.org/subscribe. Peace and freedom. Thank you. Hey, Al Scott Horton here for WallStreetWindow.com. Mike Swanson knows his stuff. He made a killing running his own hedge fund and always gets out of the stock market before the government-generated bubbles pop, which is, by the way, what he's doing right now, selling all his stocks and betting on gold and commodities. Sign up at WallStreetWindow.com and get real-time updates from Mike on all his market moves. It's hard to know how to protect your savings and earn a good return in an economy like this. Mike Swanson can help. Follow along on paper and see for yourself. WallStreetWindow.com. Hey, y'all, Scott Horton here for Braswell Business Communication Services.